The airplane cabin buzzed with a low hum of conversation as passengers settled in for the long flight. Donald Trump, now serving again as president, had boarded with only a small security detail, quietly taking his seat. Normally, he traveled on Air Force One, but for this short domestic trip, he'd insisted on something more down. To everyone's surprise, he chose a regular first-class seat instead of reserving the entire section. The seat beside him didn't stay empty for long. A man in his late 50s, his face marked by years of outdoor labor, made his way down the aisle. His calloused hands gripped a weathered leather hat, and his clothes, though clean, bore the wear of hard work. He glanced from his boarding pass to Trump, then back again. "That's me," the man said quietly, pointing to the seat number. Trump gave a polite smile and stepped aside. The farmer sat down, trying to mask his nerves, but his rough palms fidgeted against his hat. He never imagined he'd be sitting next to the President of the United States. "Heading home?" Trump asked, breaking the silence. "Yeah," the farmer replied, his voice heavy. "Montana. Had a meeting about my farm." Trump nodded, sensing the weight in his words. Around them, a few passengers stole curious glances, unaware that what began as small talk would soon silence the entire cabin. As the plane climbed, the farmer gazed out the window, lost in thought. Trump, skilled at reading people, leaned back. "You look like a man carrying something heavy. Tell me about your farm." The farmer turned, surprised. "Well, Mr. President, it's been in my family 3 generations. My grandfather broke the soil with his own hands. My father expanded it. I'm just trying not to lose it." "Why?" Trump asked. "Drought," the man said simply. 3 years now, with barely any rain. The bank doesn't care about weather-only numbers. We're drowning in debt. My wife and I already sold half the cattle. My kids are talking about leaving the farm for good. If they do, the Dawson farm ends with me." Trump fell quiet, unusually still. This wasn't a speech or a calculated pitch. It was raw truth. The farmer noticed passengers leaning closer and lowered his voice. "Sorry, didn't mean to unload all that. Don't apologize," Trump said. "You're speaking for a lot of people more than you realize." For the first time, the farmer gave a faint smile. Something unexpected was taking shape. "You know," Trump added, shifting in his seat, "people don't think of me as someone who understands farming, but my mother's father was a farmer in Scotland. Small plot, hard life. I remember visiting as a boy. Things weren't easy." "I didn't know that," the farmer admitted. "Most people don't." Trump chuckled. "I grew up in New York, sure, but I learned early that people who work the land there, the backbone of everything. Without you, there's no food on the table. Simple as that." The farmer studied him, searching for political spin, but Trump's tone carried sincerity. "My father used to tell me," the farmer said, "that when you plant a seed, you're making a promise to the future. Doesn't matter if it's corn or wheat, you're trusting tomorrow to come through." Trump leaned forward. "That's powerful. A promise to the future. I like that." The farmer began to relax. Maybe this wasn't just a conversation between a farmer and a president. It was 2 men connected by hard work and family roots. The cabin around them grew quieter as passengers leaned in to listen. "You know what hurt the most?" the farmer continued, voice tinged with grief. "Walking into my barn last winter and hearing nothing. No cows, no hay rustling, just silence. My daughter Clara cried when we sold her favorite calf. I told her it was for the best, but it broke me inside. My father always said, a barn without animals is just an empty building. When it's full, it's alive. Losing that, it's like losing family." Trump exhaled slowly. "That's real loss. But you're still fighting. That says something about you." The farmer let out a bitter chuckle. "Or maybe I'm just too stubborn to quit. Stubborn built America." Trump replied with a faint smile. The farmer turned back to the window, blinking away tears. He wasn't used to sharing this much, especially not with someone like Trump, but the words kept coming, as if he'd been waiting for someone to truly listen. Even the flight attendants paused to hear. What began as casual small talk was turning into something profound. Trump reached for his water, taking a slow sip. "I've sat across from world leaders, billionaires, generals," he said quietly. "But what you're saying, this matters as much as any of those meetings." The farmer gave a small laugh. "I doubt that, Mr. President." "No, I mean it," Trump insisted. "World leaders talk about power. You talk about survival, about feeding people. That matters more than most people realize." For years, the farmer had only seen Trump through headlines and speeches. Sitting here, he saw something different. A man who listened. "Maybe folks like me don't feel heard enough," he admitted. "We're out there before sunrise, working long after dark. No spotlight, just dirt, sweat, and hope." "And yet," Trump replied, "everything starts with you. You're right, we need to hear voices like yours more." Emotion welled in the farmer's eyes. He hadn't expected recognition, least of all from the president. For the first time in years, he felt seen. The entire cabin was silent now, passengers hanging on every word. The farmer sighed, resting his hat on his lap. "My daughter Clarushi's 17, sharp as a whip, wants to study agricultural science, figure out how to help farms survive droughts. But last week she told me, Dad, if we lose the farm, what's the point?" That crushed me. Sounds like she has vision. Trump said softly. That's rare. Vision doesn't pay tuition, the farmer muttered. Trump paused, then leaned in. But vision changes the world. Don't let her give up. The farmer managed a sad, grateful smile. Asterisk, you sound more like a father than a president, the farmer said quietly. Trump chuckled. Sometimes, that's the same thing. The cabin stirred with soft laughter. People weren't just overhearing anymore, they were drawn in, inspired by the exchange. The farmer rubbed his temples. My grandfather used to say, take care of the land and it'll take care of you. But lately, it feels like the land's stopped listening. Trump nodded thoughtfully. Maybe it hasn't stopped. Maybe it's waiting for us to be smarter, new ideas, new methods. The land always listens. The farmer considered this, eyes distant. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm too stuck in the old ways. Old ways built the foundation, Trump said with a warm smile. But your daughter's dreams, that's the roof. You need both to make a home. The farmer let out a small laugh. You're full of metaphors today. Trump grinned. Blame the altitude. Passengers chuckled quietly. The cabin wasn't just listening, they were rooting for this unlikely conversation. Asterisk, the farmer's voice grew heavy again. We once had to sell my wife's wedding ring just to pay for feed. I bought it back later, but I'll never forget her face that day. She smiled and said, rings can be replaced. Families can't. Trump's expression softened. That's strength, real strength. The farmer nodded slowly. Sometimes I wonder what keeps her with me. Maybe faith, maybe just stubborn love. Trump leaned back, thoughtful. That kind of sacrifice, that's worth more than gold. Leaders could learn from it. The farmer gave a sad chuckle. Leaders, we're just farmers trying to survive. Asterisk across the aisle. A woman dabbed her eyes with a napkin. The cabin was no longer pretending not to listen. They were part of the story now. The farmer's voice cracked. Sometimes I think about giving it all up. Selling the land, letting a corporation buy it. At least my kids wouldn't have to carry this weight. Trump shook his head firmly. Don't you dare. Corporations don't love the land the way you do. And that love, that's what makes the food taste different. The soil grows stronger. That's what makes America strong. The farmer blinked, startled by the conviction in Trump's tone. You think people would even notice if one farm disappears? They might not notice the farm, Trump said, leaning closer, but they'd feel the loss. Because every farm, every seed, every story, like yours, is part of who we are. Asterisk, the farmer swallowed hard, his eyes glistening. By now, the plane was silent except for the steady hum of the engines. Even the flight attendants stood nearby, listening. Guess I've turned this into a confessional, the farmer murmured. Trump smiled. No, you've turned it into a lesson. A man in the back spoke up softly. My father was a farmer too. Lost everything in the 80s. I wish he'd had someone to talk to like this. The cabin murmured in agreement. Strangers once lost in their own worlds now shared a single story. The farmer looked around, overwhelmed. Didn't mean to start a movement, he said with a sheepish grin. Trump chuckled. Sometimes movements start in the quietest places, even on a plane. Folding his hands, Trump continued. People think politics is about deals and speeches, but sometimes it's about listening. What you've told me tonight, it's worth more than 100 briefings. The farmer smirked. Not sure I believe that. I mean it, Trump said firmly. You remind me why leaders need to fight for people like you. If we forget farmers, we forget the country. The farmer sat back, stunned. Never thought I'd hear that at 30,000 feet. Trump smiled. Life surprises us. Passengers exchanged glances. This wasn't just talk, it felt like history whispered among the clouds. The farmer hesitated, then reached into his pocket, pulling out a folded, worn letter. What's that? Trump asked. It's from my daughter, the farmer said softly. She wrote it before I left for this trip. Told me to read it if I started losing hope. His hands trembled as he unfolded it. The cabin held its breath as he read aloud, voice breaking. Dad, if the farm goes, don't think you've failed me. You've already given me everything: faith, work, love. That's more than land can ever hold. Tears welled in his eyes. I couldn't finish reading it until now. Trump reached over, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. Your daughter sees you. That's worth more than any farm. The cabin was silent, moved to tears. The farmer wiped his eyes. Guess I'm not as tough as I thought. Toughness isn't never crying, Trump said gently. It's standing back up after you do. The farmer let out a shaky laugh. You've got a way with words. Maybe, Trump replied, or maybe your story is just that powerful. A passenger in row 3 spoke softly. Sir, I think we all needed to hear this today. The farmer looked around, humbled. For the first time in years, his burden felt lighter because it was shared. Trump turned serious. You've given me something today, a reminder. I promise I'll do everything I can to make sure farmers like you aren't forgotten. Not just in speeches, but in action. The farmer gave a skeptical look. Promises are easy. True, Trump admitted. But change starts with one. Sometimes, one promise leads to more. The farmer studied him for a long moment. For once, he believed it. Soft applause broke out across the cabin, quiet but heartfelt. The farmer blushed, caught off guard. As the plane cruised, a young woman from economy stepped forward and handed him a small charm on a chain. My grandmother gave me this. She said, she was a farmer, too. I think you should have it. I can't take this. The farmer protested, but she insisted. It's a reminder that farmers never stand alone. The cabin clapped again, some wiping away tears. The farmer held the charm tightly, speechless. Trump whispered, "See, you're not forgotten." One by one, passengers began sharing their own connections. A man spoke of his uncle's orchard, a woman of childhood summers on a dairy farm, a soldier of wheat fields before enlisting. The farmer listened, stunned. He had boarded this plane, feeling invisible. Now he realized his story was part of something bigger woven into countless others. Trump leaned toward him. "Look at this. You brought people together. That's leadership." The farmer chuckled softly. "Didn't mean to. I just told the truth." "The truth," Trump said with a grin, "is the strongest leadership there is." The farmer cleared his throat. "I don't know how to thank you, Mr. President. This talk it gave me something I thought I'd lost. Hope." Trump patted his shoulder. "Don't thank me. Thank yourself. You kept going, even when it hurt. That's hope." The farmer smiled, his eyes wet. For the first time in years, he felt lighter. Applause filled the cabin again, louder this time. The farmer wasn't just a man anymore, he was a symbol of resilience. As the plane began its descent, he looked out the window. The fields below stretched golden under the sun. "They don't look so hopeless from up here," he murmured. "Sometimes," Trump said, "you just need a new perspective." The farmer chuckled softly. "Maybe that's what this flight gave me." Trump extended his hand. "Promise me one thing, don't give up on the farm." The farmer shook it firmly. "I promise." The cabin, once full of strangers, now felt like family. When the plane touched down, the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for flying with us. And thank you to the gentleman in 4 bites for reminding us what resilience means." But cabin erupted in cheers and applause. Passengers stood, clapping with tears in their eyes. Trump rose and lifted the farmer's hand like a champion. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "this is America." The applause thundered through the cabin. At the gate, Trump stopped the farmer. "I'll be in touch. We'll make sure your farm doesn't disappear. But more importantly, I think your daughter Clara has a future we all need." The farmer froze. "You'd help her?" "Not help," Trump said with a smile. "Invest, because voices like hers will save farming." Weeks later, the farmer received a letter. Clara had been awarded a scholarship through a new agricultural program, Trump announced. At the bottom was a handwritten note. "A promise to the future, just like you said." The farmer wept as he read it. His barn was no longer just empty walls. It was a promise reborn. And it all began with a conversation at 30,000 feet.